Welcome everyone to our fourth Brook Business Network meeting of 2022. I'm very excited this morning to welcome all of you and our special guest speaker, Julie Bronsteatter. My name is Michelle Sherritt, and I am one of the founders and members and owners of the Brook Business Network and our other four powerful networking groups, the Northwest, Naperville, North Shore, and Windy City Business Networks. Before we begin this morning, I'd like to just do some brief housekeeping, tell you a little bit more about our groups. Our groups were started in 2008 on LinkedIn and have grown to be the largest networking groups within LinkedIn. We now have, within all the groups, 4,500 online members. We decided to take the groups live about 3 years ago. We trademarked all of the names. And we now have 372 paid members. So we're really excited about that. We really grew during COVID as well, which was a big surprise to us, being virtual. But during the pandemic, we did shift our focus for our membership to offer some more advertising opportunities for our members. Our membership is $3.99 a year, and it now includes a 30-minute podcast interview on our podcast, Windy City Biz, which has over 110,000 subscribers nationwide. So you get a lot of exposure that way. We put the audio on the podcast, and then the video, we make a blog post about you and your business. That's great because it gets you to 6,500 of our newsletter subscribers, so even more exposure. We also post it on our social media platforms. So each of the 5 groups has 3 platforms. They're on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So that's 15 different social media outlets as well. We also do 3 shout outs per year on various podcast interviews. So at the end, we talk, highlight 3 different businesses. So we do that for you 3 times. And then all of our online events, of course, are free. I will let you know that this week is our last week of virtual events. Yay! We are going in person. Our first in-person event is going to be April 12th. So continuing on with the membership, all of your events would be included. So any tickets for these events are included. All the monthly meetings are included. So room fees, if we have speaker fees, breakfast, sandwiches offered as well, and coffee and water at these events. You don't have to just attend your group's meetings either. You can go to the Windy City. You can go to North Shore. You can go to Northwest group meetings. So you can go to any of the meetings that you want. We do happy hour events. So like I said, April 12th is our first one. Your ticket would be included for that. And then we do some formal charity sit-down dinners during the year as well, where we choose a charity and all proceeds from the ticket prices go to that charity, 100%. Those tickets are over $150 a person, and that's included in your membership. We try to have at least 2 to 3 each year. Like I said, our first in-person event is going to be April 12th. It's going to be at Noon Whistle Brewery in Naperville at 5:30 p.m. Tickets are $20 for non-members, of course free for members. I do want to highlight that if you are a member, please still register. We need to have an accurate count because our space is limited for those events. With having 372 paid members now and over 4,500 folks on LinkedIn, you can imagine that the word gets out about our groups. We continue to grow daily and our events continue to become more and more popular. So if you're thinking about becoming a member or attending any of these events, please register quickly. Go to oakbrookbiz.net. Today's talk, we ask that you keep yourself muted unless we have a Q&A time, which we will, where you can unmute yourself if you're on Zoom and ask your questions. If you're on Facebook Live, everybody, just type in your questions in the comments section and I will be moderating those. This is being recorded and will also be made available to you folks by the end of the week, so you'll get an email for that. If you're on Facebook Live, you can simply revisit the Facebook Live. Or you can message me and with your email address and I can send that to you. Today's speaker is Julie Bronsteatter. Julie is a certified professional coach who is passionate about partnering with leaders to confidently take charge of their personal and professional lives. Today, Julie will be teaching us some coaching techniques and tools that leaders use to get the most out of their teams. Welcome, Julie. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's so great to be here today. Michelle, are you okay if I spotlight just to make it easier?
Yes. Yes.
Great. So that people can see, because
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard. Okay, great. As Michelle mentioned, I am here to talk about leadership and coaching and how essentially to grow skills to create a lasting impact. So before we go into the presentation, I want to read an excerpt. If I can grab my notes. I want to read an excerpt out of a Harvard Business Review article from 2019 called The Leader as Coach. And so it's story time a little bit. It even starts with Once Upon a Time. So sit back and relax. It's about a minute and a half of this excerpt. Once upon a time, most people began successful careers by developing expertise in a technical, functional, or professional domain. Doing your job well meant having the right answers. If you could prove yourself that way, you'd rise up the ladder and eventually move into leadership, at which point you had to ensure that your subordinates had those same answers. As a leader, you knew what needed to be done. You taught others how to do it, and you evaluated their performance. Command and control was the nature of the game, and your goal was to direct and develop employees who understood how the business worked and were able to reproduce its previous successes. Not today. Rapid, constant, and disruptive change is now the norm. And what succeeded in the past is no longer a guide to what will succeed in the future. 21st century leaders simply don't and can't have all the right answers. I'm going to read that part again. 21st century leaders simply don't and can't have all the right answers. To cope with this new reality, companies are moving away from traditional command and control practices and towards something very different, a model in which leaders give support and guidance rather than instructions, and employees learn how to adapt to constantly changing environments in ways that unleash fresh energy, innovation, and commitment. The role of a leader, in short, is becoming that of a coach, which is exactly what I'm here to talk about. And not only, helping grow your skills to create a lasting impact, but learning how to grow the skills of others, really unlock the potential of others so that they too can grow into the best leader that they want to be as well. So we're going to have a really high level introduction about leadership. The meat of the program is really going to be these 5 tips, these 5 coaching tips that I will be giving today. And then I just have a quick closing thought. And as Michelle mentioned, we will have time for some Q&A here at the end. So let's see if I can move this presentation forward. Intro. Leading is not easy. Leading isn't easy, right? And a lot of times when we think about leadership, we're the ones who make it not easy on ourselves because we have these unrealistic expectations that we put on ourselves, right? This article says, what the part that I said twice, 21st century leaders simply don't and can't have all the right answers. But I know for me, before I became a coach, I had 15 years of corporate experience. And I would say 9 of those years were probably spent in a supervisor or leadership role. And when I first got that management title, I did have these unrealistic expectations that I did have to have all the answers, that I was responsible for everything. And this gave myself a lot of pressure. Like I had this constant weight on my shoulder all the time. The weight of the team was on my shoulder all of the time. And this was really lonely because I felt like it was on me and me alone to drive that ship forward. And so everybody loves an easy button, right? And so I want to press this easy button here today. And it should be called the easier button because leadership is never going to be easy, but coaching can make leadership easier. And why is that it reduces the pressure. Because when we're coaching someone, we're no longer in the driver's seat. It puts them in the driver's seat. And we are then the ones holding the map to help navigate. We still have an important role. We're the navigation tool. They're driving. And when they're driving and we're navigating, we're constantly communicating, right? And we're creating this amazing partnership. So it's not as lonely. I'm not sitting in the front seat by myself with everybody in the back seat telling them to shut up. I want them to be driving, and I want to be there to help, creating that nice partnership. So with them in the driver's seat, now this is building leadership skills for them, right? They're becoming more autonomous. They're seeing you role model this navigation. So therefore, they're developing skills to do the job on their own and developing the skills that you're showing and role modeling as well. So easier button from a coaching perspective as you really look at leadership through the lens of a coach. So let's talk about the 5 tips that we are going to go through today. And the first one is starting with you. Now you might be sitting here like, we're here talking about leading others. What does that have to do with me, right? Like starting with me. Shouldn't we be starting with others? What we want to do is uncover what motivates you. What motivates you to lead, and not just lead in your professional role, lead in life. We're going to talk about the power of curiosity, because the more we can understand a situation, the better prepared we can be to actually strategize and move forward in a way that is more strategic. We're going to talk about practicing empathy and building that psychological safety that our teams need in order to create that collaborative environment where we can communicate freely. And speaking of collaboration, we're going to learn a really fun brainstorming tool called Yes And. If anybody is familiar with improvisation, you might be like, oh, I get that. This is a little twist on the traditional improv tool. So I'm excited to share that. And then ultimately, we're going to create action. And you're going to actually notice that I am all about creating action. And there's going to be a challenge after each one of these tips that I give. I'm going to challenge you to take action on them. So creating action as one of our buckets, but also creating action along this whole journey today. So like I said, we're going to start with you, because leading ultimately does start with you. And there's always going to be a quote that helps bring each of these tips to life as well. So this quote is, your life purpose is your North Star in the dark night as you navigate your canoe. It is the compass by which your soul directs your life journey. And again, you might be thinking, Julie, we're here to talk about leadership and coaching, and here you're talking about my life purpose and my life's North Star. Yes, I am. You know, I do this exercise with my clients. We start with a values exercise, and then we get to an ultimate like North Star statement. And when I ask them, you know, what are your values in life? And they ask, they're like, well, do you want my professional values or do you want my personal values? And then I'm like, whoa, let's broaden the lens, because our values shouldn't change based on what aspect of life we're talking about. You have a set of core values that you have across all aspects of your life, which lead up to that North Star. And maybe you all know that as like your commitment statement or your why statement. If you're a big fan of Simon Sinek, like I am, he has a great TED Talk called Start With Why, and also a great book that's based on that TED Talk. So that why statement, that North Star, is important, because when we're in the trenches of life, and trenches can include leadership, right? That's definitely a part of our life that can cause a lot of stress and energy. When we're in the trenches of our personal life, that requires a different set of energy. Ultimately, the North Star statement is when we're in that and we look up and we see what it is that motivates us, that's what drives us forward. That's what keeps us in action. So I want you to ask yourself, what is your North Star? What is the ultimate commitment in your life that leads that leads you. Because when you know what leads you, then you can lead others based on that. And so here's just a brain dump of questions that you can journal about or think about to get to your North Star statement. So what are you committed to in life? And this shouldn't be a question that you have to think really hard about. This is just naturally, what are you committed to in your life as it relates to others? So for me, the things that I'm committed to being compassionate, kind, caring. I'm committed to being authentic, I'm committed to serving and helping others. So this is really, again, just who are you? Like, what are the things that you are naturally committed to that you don't even have to think about? What gets you out of bed in the morning? For me, it's helping and serving and inspiring others. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. When I wake up and I look up, I can see that North Star statement telling me, which my North Star statement is, I'm committed to serving, helping, and inspiring others as much and as often as I can. So I wake up and I think I get to do that today. What do you value most in life? And you'll notice as you ask these questions, there's going to be a lot of repetition. That's good. The more repetition you have, the more you're narrowing in and honing in on what that North Star statement is. What do I value most? Serving and helping others. What are 3 words you would use to describe yourself? Mine are compassionate, authentic, and inspiring. You're hearing a theme, right? As I went through these questions myself. How do others describe you? This is a really great exercise because you're putting out a brand all the time, right? You don't even know it, but you're putting out a personal brand all the time. So when you ask others, okay, what am I like? Mirror back to me what you see, and they describe you. Well, then you can say, okay, yeah, I'm absolutely aligned with this. And then you can start seeing the gaps too. I'm like, ooh, that's how you would describe me. Maybe I don't want that. Okay, if I don't want that, what do I want? And how can I, put action behind that to show that this is how I want others to describe me? Another great exercise, I have my clients do this. So what is your legacy? I actually have my clients write a eulogy, and some who don't want that, they'll write a retirement. What's their speech at their retirement party? I'm happy with either one, but essentially, and not to be, morbid here at 9:48 in the morning on a Monday, but like, if I told you today that I'm guaranteeing you have 365 days to live, guaranteed that's happening. But on day 366, unfortunately, you're no longer going to be here. On day 366, what do you want people to remember you by? And not just what happened in that year. What is that legacy that you are leaving behind? So these are some great questions to journal about, think about, because the challenge here is create your North Star statement. Okay. And start with a brain dump. When I went through this exercise, I literally just put a boatload of words down that described who I was. And again, the words that just came naturally to me. Like, what are the things that I'm committed to in life? Brain dump. And then walk away. Put it down. Put a page of words and just walk away. Come back to it. Narrow down the brain dump. Walk away. Repeat this as much as you can until you get to a real succinct, like maybe 2 or 3 words that really start to identify what are the things that you are committed to. And then draft a statement. Okay, start, and a good formula is maybe, I am committed to blank for the sake of blank. That can be a really good formula. Mine doesn't necessarily follow that formula. Again, mine is I'm committed to serving, helping, and inspiring others as much and as often as I can. Notice that isn't a super profound statement. It is simply who I am. I've got another coaching colleague who his is, he's committed to helping others unlock their potential. He's clearly a leadership coach. I've got another person though, who her commitment statement is to create space for authenticity. She wants to make sure she has a space where others feel like they can bring their authentic self. So draft your statement, and it should be something that, again, we call it a North Star statement because if we look up, we should be able to read it if we were looking at the North Star. So it can't be that much of a run-on statement. So draft a statement, walk away. Come back to that statement, review it, go over it again, walk away, repeat this as needed. And when you finalize that statement, when that statement is finalized, it should do something to you physically. It should move you somehow. So when I came up with mine and I think about that statement, it almost gives me like a little tingling, like above my belly. It's like, ooh, yeah, this is what gets me moving. Because when you finalize that statement, I don't want you to walk away. I want you to start walking forward. Walk toward that statement. This is what is going to motivate you to not just be the leader in your life, or not just the leader in your professional life, but the leader in your entire life. I know we're starting like talking real personally here on this Monday morning, but that is the foundation of leadership, is identifying who you are and what motivates you to lead. The next up, be curious. Okay. We essentially talked about curiosity and starting with you, right? Become curious about like who you are. What am I committed to? So if you take anything away from today, curiosity is what I want you to take away, because the more curious we are, the more we can identify the root of the message, or the root of the problem, or the root of the situation. And the more accurate data we have, the better we can be at strategizing a solution or strategizing a plan to move forward. So I love this quote, and I love this image even more. Curiosity is the fuel for discovery, inquiry, and learning. And what better way to bring curiosity to life than through the lens of a child, right? So how do we become curious, you ask? We ask questions, of course. And I have these 7 great questions from the book, The Coaching Habit by Michael Bunyé-Stanier. And Michael Bunyé-Stanier is a thought leader in the coaching world. And he has this great book, and it comes in Audible as well, or an audio version as well. It's a quick read. Like, I think it's like 2.5 hours on Audible. And like I said, a generally quick read if you are looking for an actual book. But if you don't want to read the book, just having these questions, you can Google this and print out a PDF of these 7 questions. So based on his research, he's developed what he feels are the 7 best coaching questions. And here they are. And it's not necessarily that you need to use these in chronological order, but I use these questions an awful lot. And starting off with something open yet focused is asking someone, what's on your mind? What's on your mind right now? And this next question can be very much used with the first one, is what he calls the awe question. And what else? Because sure, most times the first thing that we say isn't the only thing, or isn't the real thing on our mind, or isn't the real thing that's bothering us, or isn't the real thing that's holding us back. This question can be used, you'll see how it can be used in conjunction with many other questions. So when all else fails, ask, and what else? And I ask this a few times with my clients to get to the root of whatever it truly is that they want to talk about, or again, what's holding them back. Speaking of holding them back, what's the real challenge here for you? What's the real challenge here for you? What I love about this question is a lot of times when you ask someone like, what's challenging about this situation, they're going to go to all external factors. Oh, well, so-and-so doesn't get their job done, so I can't get my job done. Or, so-and-so was late to get me this. So in turn, that makes me, here's the ripple effect. It's all of this external stuff. And so a lot of times I even say, I'm hearing a lot of external things that are holding me back, but what's the real challenge here for you? And I have a lot of clients who are controllers. And so a lot of times when I say, what's the real challenge here for you? They say, I feel like this situation is completely out of my control. Okay, we're having a control issue then. Let's talk about the things that are in your control. And we can, think about ways on how we can progress forward that way. So I love this question. I use this question a lot. If you're saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? As a leader, I would think you all would love this question because it's great as it relates to prioritizing. So if someone is like, I'm really excited about taking on this project, like it just sounds like such a great opportunity. Okay, well, if you're saying yes to this, let's make sure we're balancing the plate. What are you saying no to? And then they might have an idea and you might have another one, right? Like, oh, well, we can't take that off your plate. But now that I know you want to do this, let's really look at what our department priorities are, what our project priorities are, so that we can shift some things around. This is a great question to ask yourself as well. As we think about, I'm a pleaser. I say yes to a lot of things and my plate gets overloaded pretty quickly. So I ask myself this question all the time. If I'm saying yes to this, okay, what am I saying no to so that I can reprioritize and make sure that I'm managing my time? What do you want? Talk about an easy question, right? And getting to the heart of whatever it is this person is talking about. Like, what do you want? And a lot of times people are stumped when they're like, what do you mean, what do I want? Like, what do you want? And then let's talk about how we can get you there. How can I help? This, as a manager, you're now asking them, what are you looking for out of me? What's my role in this? Do you want me just to listen? Are you here to vent? Are you here because you want my advice based on my personal experience? Like, are you here to brainstorm? How can I help? This identifies your role in that situation. What was most useful for you? I love this question at the end because it identifies their key takeaways. It almost gives them like a reason to summarize the conversation. And when we summarize it, we can retain a lot better moving forward. And a bonus question, the 8th question, which we're going to revisit as it relates to creating action, is identifying, okay, how are you going to move forward? From our conversation, how are you going to move forward based on your learnings from today or based on what was most useful for today? How are you going to move that into action? So that's my 8th favorite question, is making sure that there's some action behind it. Now, some tips as it relates to curiosity and asking questions. Ask one question at a time. If you start stacking questions, then people's brains are going all over and they don't know what to ask. So ask one question at a time. This is not advice asked in the form of a question. So just because we're asking a question doesn't mean we're necessarily being curious. For example, have you ever thought of trying X, Y, and Z? That is not a question as a curiosity question. That is a leading question. So we are not looking for advice in the form of a question as it relates to curiosity. I'm not saying you can't offer suggestions, but don't think that just because you're putting a question mark at the end that you are practicing curiosity. Silence is okay. Silence is okay. It gives us a moment to pause, gives us a moment to breathe, gives us a moment to think. And I promise they will start talking. It will get to a point where it is so uncomfortable, they will start talking. And chances are what they're going to say is the thing that's on their mind. And they're going to say, oh God, I'm getting uncomfortable. I'm getting uncomfortable because I want to say this, because I want to say this. Bleh, and then they just say it. Silence is okay. Silence is space. Smile. Being curious does not mean we are interrogating, right? We're simply being curious because we want to understand. We are not trying to accuse and find reasons to blame somebody. We're being curious because we want to understand what's the problem, what's the root of the message so that we can strategize to move forward. Try not to think about the next question. you're too curious or too in your head about what to ask next, you're not going to be present in the moment and you're going to miss something. So again, if all else fails, ask the and what else? There is always more to share. Start with what or how versus why. You'll notice none of those questions were why questions. And I want to read another quote from that same Harvard Business Review article that I started with. They say that asking why questions demand that people explore reasons and motivation rather than facts. It can carry overtones of judgment, trigger attempts of self-justification, both of which are counterproductive. Well, why did you think that was the right way to move forward? Versus, what was your thought process in developing that plan to move forward? You can hear the difference, right? And granted, I added some emphasis for that added judgment undertone. But you hear the difference in the why versus the what or the how. And sometimes when I'm coaching and I have no idea what question I'm going to ask next, I literally just start with what, and then a question comes out. So you can try that as well. Here's the challenge. Stay curious longer. Okay. Print out those 7 questions and commit to asking at least 3 of them to help clarify what the team member is feeling or experiencing before providing your thoughts. And I don't care if the 3 questions are, and what else, and what else, and what else. Get to the root. Stay curious as long as you can. All right. The next tool is practicing empathy to create that psychological safety. And here's a definition: the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. You'll notice that this definition is not to walk in someone else's shoes and know exactly what they're experiencing and what they're feeling. This is all about understanding feelings. There's a great quote from Brene Brown's latest book, Atlas of the Heart. We need to dispel the myth that empathy is walking in someone else's shoes. Rather than walking in your shoes, I need to learn how to listen to the story you tell about what it's like in your shoes and believe you even when it doesn't match my experiences. So we all can relate to an emotion or a feeling. We can't necessarily relate to that emotion or feeling based on the experience that someone else is going through. We might feel completely different, but it's not about that as it relates to empathy. Empathy is about believing the feeling that the other person is having and being able to know what that feeling feels like. We all know what sadness feels like, what frustration feels like. We might not feel those things when someone else is experiencing that, but we know what that feeling is. And that's what empathy is. And 2 great tools to really showcase empathy are very simple: acknowledging and validating. And you might be like, wow, Julie, like, can this get any simpler? And there are times when I'm in a coaching session and literally for 50 minutes, all I'm doing is acknowledging and validating what the person is saying, because they just want to feel heard and they want to validate the feelings that they're having. So there's nothing more powerful than feeling heard, than feeling like someone is actively listening. And how we do that through acknowledging is by mirroring back what they're saying. So what you're saying is, so here's an example. I keep trying and trying to meet my quota, but it seems whatever I do, I just can't do it. A team member comes into you. So a leader can say, so you're saying that you're putting in a good effort, but not getting the results that you want? And here's what the team member is going to do. Yes, yes, thank you. I feel heard. That is exactly what is happening. And I know you all have felt the feeling of being heard before. So here's some other ways to mirror back. So when you blank happens. So when you are putting in the time and making your 80 calls a week, you're essentially saying that nothing is happening. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. Let me see if I get this. You're putting in the time and the effort, but you're not getting the results that you're looking for. Exactly. I'm hearing you say that you're putting in the effort, but you're not getting the results. You understand. Mirroring back what they say acknowledges that you are listening. As it relates to validation, we all can feel very guilty for having the feelings that we're having. We can all feel very judged about the feelings that we're having. When we validate, it eliminates that judgment, because no matter what, everybody has the right to feel the way that they are feeling. Everyone has the right to feel what they're feeling. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to agree that you would feel that way in that situation. But again, empathy is about believing the other person. So we all have the right to feel that way. Here's some great phrases. So it's understandable that you feel, insert the feeling. It's understandable that you feel frustrated because you're putting in a lot of time and you're not seeing the results that you want. Of course, you're feeling overwhelmed, given that it's the end of the quarter and you're putting in all of this time and energy and you aren't seeing the results. And they're going to go, yes, that is exactly what I'm feeling. I can't tell you how many times clients are like, thank you for validating exactly what I'm feeling. I feel like nobody else understands that feeling. You might think it's simple, but it's extremely powerful. So here's the challenge. Before you share, show you care. Okay, before someone comes in with a problem, before you start diving into, oh, this has happened to me before, and this is the solution, or, oh my gosh, I've got all of the answers for you. I want you to pause, acknowledge and validate, show that you are listening, validate the feelings that they are having, then get curious, ask at least 3 of those questions, then determine how you can help guide and navigate the situation. Then determine how you can strategize, how you can pull out that map as they're driving, how you can pull out that map and help navigate the situation. This next one, like I said, is a really fun game. And if you all, live in the greater Chicagoland area, maybe you're familiar with Second City, or maybe you've seen the show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? This is actually a great quote from one of Second City's executives. A bad idea is just a bridge to a better idea. So I said, yes, and is a brainstorming tool. So let's talk about the game a little bit. The traditional improvisation game is essentially accepting ideas and building upon it. So if you've ever been in the audience of a comedy show and they say, okay, audience, we want you to tell us your favorite movie, give us a feeling or an emotion, and your favorite dessert. And so they get all of these suggestions, right? And it ends up being like Sleepless in Seattle. They're like, yeah, okay, Sleepless in Seattle. Give us a feeling or an emotion. Someone shouts hyper. They're like, oh yeah, that's a good one. Let's use hyper. And what's your favorite dessert? And someone yells out, Rice Krispie treats. And they're like, oh wow. I mean, if anything's gonna make you hyper, Rice Krispie treats, it's all sugar. So perfect. So they have Sleepless in Seattle, hyper, and Rice Krispie treats. And then, so they've accepted these ideas from the audience, and then they build upon it and create a whole improvised skit right in front of your eyes. So here's what I'm not saying, and leaders might be sitting there thinking like, I don't want to accept all of the ideas from my team members. I'm not asking you to do that, okay? I'm not asking you to do that. People are going to have bad ideas. People are going to have ideas that are not strategic, out of budget, pie in the sky, and I get that you don't have to accept everything. But here's what I'm encouraging you to do. I'm asking you to find the 10% of the idea that you actually like. Because when you are on the hunt for that 10% of the horrible idea, you are still listening. Because how many of you, your team members come in with this horrible off strategy idea, and all you're thinking about is how horrible the idea is, why you hate it, and all of the things that, all of the better solutions that you have. Well, you have now completely missed everything that the team is sharing with you because you're so worried about the things that you don't like about it. So I'm asking you to flip it and find the 10% that you do like, and literally say, oh, this shows active listening, right? And we're finding the 10%. We are clearly actively listening by saying, you know, guys, what I like about that idea is, and then you tell them the 10% that you like about. So, you know, everyone's talking about going into space, right? So I always give this example, like, say you're a food manufacturer or something, and you want to like sample your products, and they're like, their team comes in and they're like, you know, I know the brief said you really think about like innovative ways we could sample our products, and like we want to contact Jeff Bezos and like take our products to space, and like we want to, you know, do sampling in space. Like, how out of this world is that? And of course, like they like elaborate, right? They've got data and charts and all of this amazing things on like taking the product to the moon. And here you're like, oh, this is a terrible idea, but I'm still going to listen. What's the 10% that I like? You know, everyone, what I like about that idea is, yeah, innovation was the key to this brief. Like, go big or go home. Like, you all went big, and you're talking about something so relevant. Everyone is talking about space right now. So what I like about that idea is that you're thinking big. And so this eliminates judgment because you are acknowledging them. You are acknowledging that they have provided value to the conversation. And when you let them know that they've provided value to the conversation, then they're going to want to keep brainstorming with you. They're going to want to keep engaged in the conversation. So you say what you like about it to eliminate judgment, and then you add on your brilliant idea. And it made me think about, you know, you were talking about, you know, space and out of this world. It got me thinking about maybe sampling in the Space Needle, like, and creating this whole cool experience in the Space Needle with our core customers in the, you know, greater Seattle land area. It's a way to show how you are building upon the 10% of the idea that you like. And now, boom, we've activated creativity. They know that nothing's off the table, and they can start building. And this is where you've built that safety for safe collaboration. It's a really fun tool. So challenge, of course, the challenge is to play the game. During your next brainstorm, start modeling yes and to see the impact. Or if someone just comes in, you don't even know you're going into a brainstorm, they're like, I've got this brilliant idea. And maybe it's someone who always has brilliant ideas, is always coming in, and you're like, oh God, one of these again. Now you've got something fun to look forward to. You can play the game. What is the 10% that I like? And how do you build upon that? All right, we are down to our final tip, and that is creating action. And as I said, I'm asking you to do action with each one of these. So I'm a big fan of action because action is the foundational key to all success, not just according to Pablo Picasso, but I think according to a lot of people. He just happened to say it first. And I love this image because when we think about action, I think a lot of times we all reference that giant leap. But what's underneath that giant leap is a lot of tiny steps, a lot of baby steps. And it's all of those baby steps put together that then when we look back, you can truly see that giant leap. So I've got some fun tools. And the first one I talked about in the curiosity bucket, and that's all about asking more questions. Okay. So when you're ending a conversation, you say, you know, what have you learned? They tell you their key takeaways. What will you do with your learning? How are you going to create action based on those learnings? What was most useful for you? That's straight up one of those 7 questions. What was most useful for you? They tell you their key takeaways. How will you use that to create action this week? And you can even add accountability in here as well. And when do you want to meet up, you know, so that you can give me an update on where your action is. Another one, aim smart, aim small and smart. So everyone always says go big or go home. I say go small or go home. And AIM and SMART are 2 acronyms. I use these a lot with clients when they want to develop action into something that is really big and overwhelming. So for example, I'm gonna use this in the context of running a marathon. So if I'm like, I want to run a marathon and I have absolutely no idea where to start, we're gonna aim. A is absolute bare minimum action. So, okay, when I think about running a marathon, I don't run. What's the absolute bare minimum action I could take? Well, I could buy a pair of shoes. That would be the absolute bare minimum action I could take. Got it. What's the ideal action? In an ideal world, there are no barriers. Nothing is holding me back. My ideal action is that I still need the shoes. I'll buy a pair of shoes and I'll start running. That would be an ideal action. Okay. What's the middle? What feels like, something that's a stretch, but not, too much that it feels unrealistic. So, okay, I'm going to buy a pair of running shoes and I'm going to start walking 3 days a week. That feels like the middle. That feels like a really good first step. Now, you want to smartify it. So let's make sure it's a SMART goal. And if you all have done evaluations before, I'm sure you all are familiar with this acronym, but we're going to go through it again. So is my goal specific? Yes, I'm going to buy a pair of shoes. I'm going to walk 3 days a week. That's specific. Is it measurable? Yeah, I either need to buy the shoes or not, and I'm going to walk 3 days a week. I can measure that. Is it achievable? And that's based on you. Yeah, I feel like that's achievable. Is it relevant? Does it relate to my ultimate goal of wanting to run a marathon? Yes, it's getting me moving. I'm getting a pair of running shoes and I'm going to start moving. Is it time-based? I'm going to do it for 2 weeks. I'm going to do it for 2 weeks and then I'm going to check in. And then after those 2 weeks, I'm going to go through this again. What's the absolute bare minimum after 2 weeks? Well, the bare minimum is I walk 5 days a week. What's the ideal action? I start running 5 days a week. What's the middle action? I'm going to walk 3 days and I'm going to add a 4th day. And on that 4th day, I'm going to run. So that's my middle action. I'm going to do that for 2 weeks. And you go back and do this over and over and over until you get to running your marathon. So the challenge here is create an aim plan together with your team for a current or upcoming project. By doing it together gives the team a sense of ownership. They're in the driver's seat, right? You're navigating, gives the team a sense of ownership and overall accountability. Now everyone is accountable because everyone has decided this is what the plan is. So we have covered a lot of ground today. Just as a reminder, the 5 tips are starting with you. Okay, first, I want you to start with you to understand what your underlying motivation for leading in your life is. So knowing your why. Okay, what is that North Star statement? Once you determine it, remember, you don't walk away, you walk forward, you walk toward it. Be curious. Remember those 7 questions. The coaching habit by Michael Bunyé Stanier. You can download those 7 questions and have those printed right in front of you. Practice empathy. Acknowledge and validate. Recognize that you are actively listening and that they have the right to feel the way that they are feeling. It's a very powerful tool. Yes, and play the game. Find the 10% of the idea that you do like. And this, I've had a couple clients who are like, this was actually really fun because, man, my team had some really, really terrible ideas this week. And I was almost laughing in my head like, okay, seriously, what do I like about this? But again, it creates that safe space that anything is on the table. I do like something about that. Let's keep the collaboration going. And then, of course, creating action. And we're not talking about aiming big. We're not going big or going home. We are aiming small. Think about what's that absolute bare minimum. What's the ideal? What's the in-between? And that's the golden nugget. The in-between is the golden nugget to move forward on. Once you've committed that or once you've achieved it, you go back for the second step and you repeat, rinse and repeat until you've achieved the ultimate goal. So just one closing thought. And I said, if you're taking away anything today, when all else fails, ask a question. Stay curious longer. And if staying curious is asking, and what else, then I have done my job here today. Thank you all so much. Michelle, thank you again for having me. Open for questions.
Yeah, if anyone on Zoom would like to unmute and ask a question, now is the time. I don't think I saw any questions in the chat box. Nobody wants to unmute. Okay, so on Facebook, we have a lot of questions, a lot of comments. One comment was leadership's not easy. I think this was at the very beginning. And your employees have no idea, and that sometimes is very frustrating. Do you have any tips on how to handle that frustration for us leaders?
The frustration for you leaders, I would say, find a coach. Work through that together with somebody else, because when you can release, a lot of people, when they go to leaders, they're unleashing so much, right? And then a lot of times they ask you, like, who do you get to unleash on? And you're like, nobody. So I really would encourage you to find that partner that you can have those conversations with to release the energy so that you can show up in the best way possible.
Okay. Another comment is people really just want you to listen to them and they want to feel heard. I think this goes along with what you said as well, just listening to your employees. I mean, we have brainstorming all the time for our projects. And yeah, sometimes some ideas come up where you're like, not so much. But I like your idea of finding 10% of that idea and working on it and building on it.
Yeah.
We have some comments about some people who always have ideas coming in, but they're never great ideas. So they really like that tip as well.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to add to that tip?
No, the beauty is you get to say no to 90% of that idea. Like when you think about it, if you're like, oh my gosh, Julie, I can't even find 10%, you get to say no to 90% of it. Just find the one nugget that you can build upon.
Okay. Some questions. Somebody want to know what software you used for your presentation today.
Oh,
I've never seen one look like this. What is it called?
It's called Prezi, Prezi. Yeah, it's nice to like be in the presentation with you so that I can still be engaged. So
Definitely.
Great software.
And then someone said, how long do the people that you work with typically, how long do you work with people typically or on average as far as coaching goes? Sorry, I couldn't read that.
No, that's okay. It's a 6-month commitment is typically when I work with my clients. It's for a minimum of 6 months.
Okay. And who would you say is your ideal client?
My ideal client are leaders. I work with a lot of creative-minded individuals, so a lot of folks with advertising or marketing. I work with a lot of attorneys, a lot of consultants, so kind of creative-minded individuals who are stuck in their head where that those sabotaging thoughts or tunnel thinking live. And I really help people see the big picture. Provide clarity to see the big picture so that they can lead with something so much greater than their mind. They can truly start leading with their heart. Because I used to think that innovation was something that people had or didn't have. I didn't realize it was something we all could access. And when I finally started accessing this after 15 years in the corporate world, I realized that my intuition was leading me the whole time. My head just had a different idea. And there was always conflicting thoughts. And my head always told me to do the hard thing. So I always did the hard thing. So it always felt hard. And now that I'm leading with my heart and my intuition, it's not to say that I'm doing easy things. I'm doing challenging things, but I am drawn to those challenges. I'm willing to take risks and bet on myself. And if I fail, I know that that North Star is guiding me the right way, because that North Star is exactly where this next step is.
Awesome. And then it has somebody else who said, we didn't really get into your background. And I thought I had said some stuff, but maybe not.
Yeah.
You want to know? They want to know how you got into coaching if you've always been a coach.
Yeah. So I have 15 years of corporate experience. I spent the first 10 years in advertising and marketing on the on the account management side. I actually, because I hired a coach myself and realized that I wanted something more human-centric. So I made my way into the HR world, spent about 5.5 years in HR. And that's where I really developed my love for leadership development and leadership coaching. And that's when I decided in June of 2020 to leave the corporate world and do coaching full time. And it's been an amazing journey ever since.
Yeah.
Because I get to help inspire, I get to serve, help, and inspire others as much and as often as I can, right? There's my North Star statement. And I get to do that every day.
Oh, that's awesome. And Julie has spoken to our groups once before too. So you can go onto our website and see her past talks as well. I'm just looking at other comments, just saying great presentation, a lot of great tips that I'm definitely going to start to implement because I thought I was a lost cause as a leader.
You are not a lost cause, I promise. Let's talk.
Another comment was as a business owner, you're kind of tossed into this leadership role with no real leadership background or skills. So it's nice to know that there's coaches out there who can help you to build this up. So you think,
Yes.
so 6 month minimum, um, have you had people stay on for longer or do they need to stay on for longer? And how long do you have to keep developing these skills was the question.
Yeah. So my hope is after 6 months, we wrap it up and like off you go. There are some people that stay on because they just want to keep like we've met the goals and they want to add some other goals. So they want to work towards those. Some people are entrepreneurs and they just like to have that added accountability, that added partner. So yeah, like 6 months is really the minimum that I will, because that's where the magic happens. Like when I talk about that leap, right? That image that was that leap, it's all about the small steps that happen between those 6 months. When we start reflecting back of how far we've come, that's where you can really see that giant leap. Yeah. So happy to talk to anybody. My website, let's see here if I can pull it back up. Here's my website, and you can find me on LinkedIn as well. But it's just jbronsteattercoaching.com. Here's my email address, and I'm on LinkedIn. I have a weekly video series that drops on Tuesdays. If you liked the energy here, I promise I bring a lot of that energy to that as well.
Well, Julie, I want to thank you so much for speaking to our group today and for everybody who is on Zoom as well as Facebook Live. As a reminder to everyone, our first in-person event is going to be April 12th. It's going to be a happy hour at 5:30 p.m. at Noon Whistle Brewery in Naperville. Tickets are $20 for non-members and, of course, free for members. Remember, everyone must register. Your ticket includes 2 drink tickets, pizza, and hours of networking with local business owners. Remember, even if you aren't a member, to register as well. To learn more about our groups, membership, upcoming events, see past events, visit our website at oakbrookbiz.net. Thank you again so much, Julie. This was amazing as always. And the recording will be made available to everyone later on this week. So thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Thanks all. Happy Monday.